What is up, guys? Today's tier list will be looking at every episode from the latest season of The Flash and ranking them from worst to best, obviously in a tier list format. So not really worst to best, just F tier, D tier, C tier, B tier, A tier, and S tier. The order here will obviously just be from 1 to 22 in order, so there's not really much to add there. So let's just start with episode 1, which is titled Nora. This episode was a pretty good start to the season. It did a good job in introducing the one of the main characters, or a new character in Nora, a character who doesn't seem like a lot of people like nowadays, but I remember in the beginning she was definitely a great character. At least I thought she was pretty great. There are a lot of great moments like the Flash ring scene, the plane scene, a lot of great moments, although the new costume Barry got is god-awful, and it's insane how bad it is, especially compared to the Season 4 costume, and really compared to the Season 1, 2, and 3 costume as well. You see the Season 1 costume in this episode, it's so much better than the new costume he gets. Anyway, I thought this episode was a pretty good start to the season, not incredible or anything, and especially looking back, it could have definitely been a little bit better, especially in the costume department, but I would still put it in the B tier. Episode 2, titled Blocked, I thought it had a great ending, but the rest of the episode was not nearly as good. The villain they had in the episode, like, I don't even remember her name, I think it was just Block, the character who was able to create these force fields, these yellow force fields. She was not a very good villain, and although the last 2 minutes were pretty great, they were really intense, they really made Cicada look like he was going to be a very menacing villain, although he didn't turn out to be. I thought this episode had a great last 2 minutes, but definitely not a very good first, 38 minutes. Still, though, I would put it in the C tier. Episode 3, titled The Death of Vibe. I really remember liking this episode a lot, mostly because of the play on the title of the episode, The Death of Vibe, how they managed to use that to their advantage in the episode. It's one of the best titles, and most genius and creative titles for any episode of the Arrowverse, how they used that in the episode. I thought that most of the episode was really intense, and I didn't know if Cisco was going to die in the episode, making it a lot more intense than if they hadn't named it The Death of Vibe. Because of all of those things, I would put The Death of Vibe in the A tier, not quite the S tier, but I definitely think the A tier really works for this episode. Episode 4, titled Newsflash, was definitely not very good at all. A lot of stupid things happening in the episode, a lot of stupid moments and dialogue especially. The villain of this episode was terrible, and although there are definitely some good moments, this episode in general is definitely the worst out of the episodes I've gone over so far, so I would put it in the D tier. Episode 5, titled All Dolled Up, could have been a lot better than it is. This episode had a great antagonist in Ragdoll, who I thought should have appeared a lot more than he did, not only in the season, but in this episode as well. He should have had some much better fight scenes, because he didn't really have any, and obviously the thing at the end with Iris saving Barry by jumping off the building, that was so stupid. Definitely crippled this episode quite a lot, and I would put this episode in the C tier or maybe even the D tier, honestly. Ragdoll is good, but the rest of the episode, everything that's happening, it's just not. Anyway, moving on to episode 6, titled The Icicle Cometh, which had everything to do with the storyline between Killer Frost and her newly introduced father, Thomas Snow, aka the Icicle. I didn't love the fact that Killer Frost was getting her own storyline and the retconning of her origin story. Didn't love that part of it at all, of really the entire season, but I do think this episode has its moments. I really like the Icicle as a villain, and although this episode kind of feels filler, it's fine, because it is close to the beginning of the episode, of the season. In episode 6, it's fine to have a filler episode. So this episode I thought was just okay, definitely not great or anything, so I'd put it in the C tier. Episode 7, titled, I always forget the title, Oh Come All Ye Thankful, was pretty good. I liked the Cicada's origin story. I thought that they handled that part of it very well, except for when he actually got his powers in the end, and there's this terrible moment where he basically says, oh, I'm very evil now. It was just so stupid. The rest of that, beyond that, I thought it was a pretty good origin story. The whole storyline with the Flash and XS going up against Weather Witch was fine, definitely not great or anything, and I definitely think it doesn't really make this episode any higher than I would put it in the C tier, but it definitely has its moments, and it's definitely not a bad episode at all. Episode 8, titled What's Past This Prologue, is the mid-season finale of the season, and the 100th episode of the show, so it had a lot to be, or a lot to do, and I think it pulled off most of what it was trying to do. I think that the whole storyline with Barry and Nora, going back in time to Season 3, to Season 2, to Season 1, all of that was really great. The scenes with Zoom were really intense, the scenes with Harrison Wells were very well acted, and the scene with the particle accelerator explosion, but basically paying tribute to the show, showing every character who was affected by this explosion, how they got their powers, or some other thing that affected them. I thought that part of it was really, really awesome. One of the best moments in the entire season. I didn't love the ending, though, where they everything that happened up until this point didn't really matter anymore because they had that device, didn't really work at all, and then they just figure out something else that Killer Frost can defeat Cicada, making Cicada obsolete as a villain, or just not very threatening at all, and making this episode not really mean anything, except the season finale definitely saved this episode from that, where it turns out Reverse Flash's whole plan was contingent on this episode, or really it was because of this episode. So the finale saved this episode from being in the B tier, but I would actually put this episode in the A tier, as I still really don't like the ending, even though the episode still matters. I really don't like how unsatisfying the ending is after this whole quest. Honestly, I think they should have just defeated Cicada in this episode and moved on to the second Cicada, or even the Reverse Flash. I think moving on to the Reverse Flash might have been the best course of action. Anyway, then there is Elseworlds Part 1, which is, I think, definitely the best episode of the Elseworlds crossover, but honestly, maybe my favorite crossover episode of the entirety of the Arrowverse. The Barry/Oliver body swap was genius and really, really funny. This episode had a lot of great fight scenes and a lot of great CGI moments, and the build-up towards episode 2 and 3, this episode did a very good job at doing that. The inclusion of Superman, the moments with the Monitor, which there wasn't really many moments with the Monitor, and the Monitor was more in episode 2 and 3, but still, this episode was definitely very, very good, and honestly, my favorite episode of any crossover episode of the Arrowverse. A large part of that is because of the body swap whole thing, and also because of Superman and the Flash and Green Arrow and Supergirl all teaming up against Amazo, really feeling like this episode included the Justice League, so I would put it in the S tier. Episode 10, titled The Flash and the Furious, was pretty stupid, or at least a large part of it was very, very stupid. I do actually really like the scenes with Barry in his cage talking to like Nora and Sherlock and other people in the show. I definitely really like those scenes, and I get why they had to bench Barry for this episode because of the Elseworlds crossover, so that part of everything is fine. It's just that the whole storyline with Nora and this car thief, which I don't even remember her name, it wasn't very good at all. Because of all those things, I will put this episode in the D tier, but I definitely really liked a part of it, especially everything to do with Sherlock and his investigation. Episode 11, titled Seeing Red, has its moments, and although I don't really like Norvok being included, I'm pretty sure that's his name, because he's a terrible character, and obviously the fact that Cicada still is not a very menacing villain at all, or not still anymore because of episode 8, and then this episode where Barry just beats him up, almost killing him with barely any effort, really. He just goes crazy and is able to kill him if he wanted to. Although it was a very intense moment, it made Cicada such a non-threat as a villain. This episode I definitely think is not bad, and I did like a large part of it, but I still think this episode, sorry for that, it's really stupid for the main villain of the season, or at least who we thought was going to be the main villain of the season. Because of that, I would put it maybe like on the cusp between C and D, but honestly, I would probably put it in the D tier, as it's that part of it, the part with Cicada, it's so stupid. Although it didn't really cripple episode 8 very much, although that was a big part of why episode 8 is not in the S tier, it definitely did make episode 11 really, really not good at all, especially for the season-long storyline. Anyway, moving on to episode 12, titled Memorabilia, which I think there was like one good part about it, one not very good part, with Nora going to Grace's mind. That part of it was not very good, mostly because of the acting in all these moments from Jessica Parker Kennedy, and although this is excused because she is a kid, the actress who plays Grace, these two actresses going off each other in these scenes, it didn't work at all because of the fact that they're not very good. Again, that is fine for the kid, but not very good, not fine at all for the adult. Jessica Parker Kennedy, who I think is not a very good actress at all. Anyway, I do really like the scenes with Barry and Iris going to the Flash Museum. I thought those scenes were awesome. I love the Red Death reference. Hopefully that leads to something in season 6. This episode is definitely not bad at all, so I would put it in the C tier. It definitely doesn't deserve to be any, maybe, honestly, yeah, I'll put it in the B tier. I definitely like a large part of the episode. So, what is this? Episode 13, titled Goldfaced. I hated this episode. I think that the storyline with Barry and Ralph and Goldface was fine. It definitely wasn't great, and I didn't like the fact that Barry never used his powers in the episode, as far as I can remember, but that wasn't really the huge problem with the episode. The problem was the storyline with Iris. She went to Cicada's house and talked to him for a while, and then basically defeated him with some pepper spray and a knife, or not even a fighting knife. It was not like a dagger. It was a kitchen knife. It was so stupid. Maybe one of the stupidest moments in the history of The Flash. Because of that, this episode goes in the F tier. Episode 14, titled Cause and Excess, had a great concept on paper, and it was executed pretty well, but not incredibly well. I think that Legends of Tomorrow definitely did it a lot better, and Here I Go Again. I'm pretty sure that it was what it was called in Season 3 with Zari. Because of this episode skipped over so much of what we could have seen, like in terms of like the certain scenarios. Like it showed 3 scenarios, I'm pretty sure, but there could have been so many more that they really just showed in a very short montage that we can barely see or comprehend. So because of that, I definitely think this episode could have been a little bit better, and the fact that Barry's barely in it is definitely not a good thing at all for a show called The Flash. I definitely think it doesn't bother me for the most part, but looking back in the season, there are a lot of episodes where Barry should have been in it just a little bit more. Because of all those things, I would put Cause and Excess in maybe in the B tier. I definitely did really like the concept, and I definitely think it was executed fairly well. It definitely wasn't executed incredibly well, but I also think Cicada was pretty good in this episode. Not great or anything, and definitely he's the worst villain, but I definitely think he was a lot better than he was in the episode before that, which is Goldface, but that doesn't really take a lot to be better than that. Anyway, moving on to episode 15, titled Gorilla Grodd vs. King Shark, which I thought was a great episode, including just a great CGI fight scene. It's definitely, I would say, the second best CGI fight scene on the show, the first between The Flash and Solivar in Season 3, and although it's definitely not anywhere near the best CGI episode, as also Enter Flash Time is a little bit better, in fact, it's a lot better, this episode is still a great episode. I really like the fight scene. I definitely like how it humanizes King Shark, making him more of an anti-hero, maybe even a hero than before. I definitely liked all of that, so I thought the CGI was great. I loved Gorilla Grodd's very comic booky plan, and in the end, I thought this was, in my opinion, an S tier episode. Episode 16, titled What's Past This Prologue. I definitely think this is where the season, or at least the storyline of the season, started getting really good. Obviously, episode 15 is where it started getting good, but this is where the season-long storyline started really ramping up, and I started really liking the season. Not really because of everything to do with Cicada, but they got rid of the original Cicada in the episode, which I think that they did that very well. I think it concluded with a good rivalry between the two characters, and although he was replaced with a character who had actually a worse rivalry with the Flash than he did, he was also replaced with a much better villain because of how much more threatening she is, and like in terms of her fighting ability, and she's a lot more badass. Still though, I thought this episode was great and ended in a very intense moment, so I would put it in the A tier. Episode 17, this is 17, right? Yeah, episode 17, titled Time Bomb. This was a genuinely awesome episode. I thought that the fight scenes between the Flash and Cicada were great. I love that hospital scene where Cicada threw the lightning dagger into the hospital. It looked so cool, and honestly, this episode in general was really good until the ending, where it went from good to incredible. The reveal to Barry that Nora, from Sherlock Wells, that Nora's working with Thawne was handled so incredibly well, and I love the reaction from Barry. Grant Gustin does such a great job in the role in this moment especially, and it's just such an intense moment. This is really where I felt like the season was ramping up so fast, and I was loving it. Because of that, I would honestly put this episode in the S tier. Episode 18, titled Godspeed, was a little bit disappointing because of the title of the episode and all the hype surrounding the character of Godspeed. His costume looks great, and I really liked his inclusion in the storyline and how it worked, but I don't like that he's in the future, I don't like his actor, and I don't like the character in general, which is very disappointing. The storyline of the episode works really well, in my opinion. I really like seeing the future. It was really cool seeing the future of Central City, and the conflict between Barry and Nora in the background. Really, it's definitely really good, but this episode is only a little bit disappointing because of how they used Godspeed and how they titled this episode. Still though, I would put it in the B tier. Episode 19, titled Frost Pack, or Snow Pack, actually. It was pretty good. It was like basically the second part to the Icicle Cometh, which is fun. I definitely think that part of the storyline was pretty good. Definitely not great or anything, and I don't love the fact that they have kind of a filler episode near the end of the season at all. Although it's not really filler because it's a part of a different storyline, and Cicada does appear, it does feel filler for the most part, which I don't like near the end of the season. Still though, I really like the fight scene between Killer Frost and Icicle, and although his death came out of nowhere and was not emotional at all, and I also don't like that her mother is now getting her own storyline with her own powers. It made me roll my eyes when I saw that. Anyway, I thought this episode was definitely not great, but also not bad either, so I would put it in the C tier. Episode 20, titled Gone Rogue. I didn't like this episode. I thought it was really corny. It was cringy, kind of. The dialogue, the acting was pretty bad for the most part. It definitely felt like it didn't really mean anything until the ending. And I especially hate that one moment where, first of all, the moment where Team Flash disguises himself as hostages and reveals that they are those hostages. It was so stupid. And then when Iris punches Ragdoll, basically, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. He just punched Ragdoll, and he was defeated, which I don't understand why they keep on throwing Ragdoll under the bus for Iris. I don't understand it. Anyway, I thought this episode was definitely a step down for the rest of of how the season was going, so I would put it in the F tier. So I'll be honest, I don't really 100% remember a lot from episode 21, even though it was only like a couple weeks ago. Because of that, I mean, it's very it's very forgettable as an episode. I definitely think that it could have used some Reverse Flash storyline, which is the season finale. Very much benefited from all of that. I did really like everything to do with Ralph in the episode. I really liked how that all happened, how he concluded everything that was going on. I loved how they were making Ralph more of a detective in the episode, which I think he should have been the entirety of the season, maybe even instead of Sherlock Wells' investigation. Anyway, that part of the episode was great, but the rest of it definitely wasn't great at all. So I think I should probably put this episode maybe in the B tier for now. And that brings us to the season finale, which is titled Legacy. So the first 15 minutes or so are fine. It's the Team Flash fighting against Cicada, the conclusion to all of that. That part of the episode is really just okay, and that definitely kind of keeps it from the S tier, but I think the rest of the episode is pretty damn amazing. Honestly, it might not even keep it from the S tier, we will see. The rest of the episode is really good. The conflict between the Flash and Reverse Flash is incredible, really cementing them as the best rivalry the Arrowverse has ever seen, at least like for like the entirety of their rivalry over the course of the last 5 seasons of The Flash. It all kind of culminated a little bit in this whole storyline in the episode, and I thought that worked so well. The fight scenes, like the speedster race, was so refreshing to see because we have not seen a lot of those at all. Basically, the entirety of the ending of the episode is really good. Nora's death is definitely not as emotional as it should be, mostly because of 2 reasons. One, Jessica Parker Kennedy's acting and the lack of music, which works for some deaths, like especially the snapping at the end of Infinity War because of how intense it is. This one really could have used some music, and although Jessica Parker Kennedy's acting isn't great, I would say that, like I said in my review, the acting from Candice Patton and Greg Gustin is so good in this moment that it saves the entire thing. I love the crisis setup at the end. I loved basically everything that they tried to do at the end. I didn't love Cisco getting rid of his powers, but I definitely think it fit the entirety of his storyline. Because of all of those things, I think I'm gonna honestly put this episode in the S tier along with the rest of the S tier episodes. So I'll pause the video right here, and I'll be back in a second as I rearrange the list, making it a more accurate list or ranking of the season of The Flash. So here we have the rearranged tier list, basically ranking the episode from worst to best. In the F tier we have episode 13 titled Goldfaced and episode 20 titled Gone Rogue. In the D tier we have episode 4 titled Newsflash, episode 10 titled The Flash and the Furious, episode 5 titled All Dolled Up, as well as episode 11 titled Seeing Red. In the C tier we have episode 2 titled Blocked, episode 6 titled The Icicle Cometh, episode 7 titled O Come All Ye Thankful, as well as episode 19 titled Snowpack. In the B tier we have episode 12 titled Memorabilia, or is this episode? Yeah, episode 12, as well as episode 21 titled The Girl with the Red Lightning, as well as episode 14 titled Cause and Excess, episode 18 titled Godspeed, and episode 1 titled Nora. In the A tier we have episode 16 titled What's Past, it's titled Failure as an Orphan, episode 2 titled, episode 3 titled The Death of Vibes, as well as episode 8 titled What's Past is Prologue. In the S tier we have episode 17 titled Time Bomb, episode 22 titled Legacy, episode 15 titled King Shark vs. Gorilla Grodd, and in my opinion is the best episode of the season, which is kind of unfair because it's a crossover episode, episode 9 titled Elseworlds Part 1. With all of that in mind, what do you think about this tier list? And let me know yours in the comments down below. If you want me to do this same thing for Arrow Season 7, let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.